The great ships of the Kithara hegemony moved through space like metal mountains. Each one was 3 kilometers long and carried enough weapons to turn a planet into ash. For 300 years, these ships had brought fear to every corner of the galaxy. Commander Velthak stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching another world surrender. The creatures below were called Xenathi. They had blue skin and 6 arms, and they built cities that looked like crystal flowers. Yesterday, they had been proud. Today, they begged for mercy. "Send the usual terms," Velthak told his communications officer. The terms were always the same. "Give us half of everything you make. Send your young to work in our factories. Never build weapons. Never fight back." The Xenathi agreed to everything. They always did. Velthak was bored. He had been conquering worlds for 40 years, and it was always the same story. The aliens would fight for a few days or weeks. Then they would see the bioweapons and surrender. The hegemony had weapons that could kill every living thing on a planet in hours. Most species were smart enough not to test them. "Sir," said his tactical officer, "we have reports from the human sectors." Velthak turned his attention to the display. The humans lived in a small group of star systems at the edge of known space. They had maybe 50 worlds. All of them small and unimportant. The hegemony had told them years ago to stay in their little corner and not cause trouble. "What are they doing now?" Velthak asked. "The same as always, sir. Farming, mining, building cities. They sent another diplomatic message asking us to respect their borders." Velthak laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. The humans were strange creatures. Most species either surrendered immediately or fought until they were destroyed. The humans did neither. They just ignored the hegemony and went about their business. "Have they sent tribute?" Velthak asked. "No, sir. Same as every year. They say they are an independent species and do not recognize our authority." Curious. Velthak pulled up files on human psychology. His scientists had studied them for decades. Humans were mammals. Like many species in the galaxy, they had only 2 arms and walked on 2 legs. They were not particularly strong or fast. They lived for maybe 100 years if they were lucky, but they had strange behaviors that puzzled the hegemony's experts. They formed emotional bonds with creatures that were not even their own species. They would risk their lives to save strangers. They built monuments to their dead and told stories about their ancestors. Most strange of all, they had something they called families. Groups of related humans who lived together and protected each other. The adults would die before letting harm come to their young. This made no sense to the Kithara. In their society, the strong survived and the weak were left behind. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "the humans have sent another message. They want to establish a trade agreement." Velthak read the message. It was polite and formal. The humans offered to trade food, medicine, and rare metals. In return, they wanted technology and protection from raiders. "Ignore it," Velthak said. "They have nothing we need." This was true. The hegemony took what it wanted from conquered worlds. Why trade when you could simply take? The humans could keep their small worlds for now. They were too far away to be worth the effort of conquest, and their technology was hundreds of years behind hegemony standards. Admiral Kreshta, the supreme commander of the hegemony fleet, had different ideas. He had been watching the humans for years and saw them as a potential threat, not because they were strong, but because they were unpredictable. "Every species in the galaxy fears us," Kreshta had told the High Command. "Every species except the humans. They show no fear, no respect, no submission. This is dangerous." But the High Command was not worried about humans. They were worried about the rebellion that was growing in the Andromeda sectors. 3 species had joined together and were actually fighting back against hegemony rule. They had new weapons and seemed to be learning how to fight effectively. The humans were forgotten in the planning rooms of the hegemony capital. They were a curiosity. Nothing more. A small species that lived far away and minded their own business. Velthak turned his attention back to the conquest of the Xenathi homeworld. Tomorrow, his ships would move to the next system. There was always another world to conquer, another species to break. The humans could wait. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in her garden on the planet humans called Kepler's Garden. It was a beautiful world with red soil and 2 small suns. She had lived here for 8 years, ever since the colony was founded. Her daughter played among the vegetables, while Sarah tended to the tomatoes. "Mommy," her daughter asked, "why don't the aliens like us?" Sarah knelt down beside her 6-year-old child. "They don't know us very well, sweetie. Sometimes people are afraid of things they don't understand. But we're nice," the little girl said. "Yes, we are," Sarah agreed. She looked up at the sky, where hegemony scout ships sometimes passed by. The aliens had been watching the human colonies for years, but they had never made contact beyond formal warnings to stay within their territory. Most humans tried not to think about the hegemony. Life in the colonies was hard enough without worrying about alien conquerors. There were crops to grow, machines to repair, and children to raise. The human colonies were peaceful places where people worked together and took care of each other. But some humans remembered the old stories from Earth. Stories about what humans could become when their families were threatened. Stories about the terrible wars that had nearly destroyed their homeworld before they learned to live in peace. Sarah hoped those days were gone forever. She wanted her daughter to grow up in a galaxy where humans could live quietly among the stars, building their gardens and raising their children in safety. The hegemony ships passed overhead, dark shapes against the alien sky. Sarah held her daughter close and went back to her gardening. Tomorrow, the child would start school with the other colony children. They would learn about mathematics and science and art. They would grow up to be farmers and engineers and teachers. They would never know war. Sarah believed this because she wanted to believe it. Because hope was stronger than fear, and love was stronger than hate. Because humans had learned to be better than they once were. She was wrong about some things, but she was right about love being stronger than hate. The galaxy would learn this lesson soon enough. Admiral Kreshta received the mining survey reports while eating his breakfast. The hegemony scouts had found something interesting in human space. A planet called Kepler's Garden contained large deposits of thorium, a rare metal needed for the newest hegemony weapons. "How many humans live there?" he asked his aide. 2,000, sir. It is a small farming colony. They have been there for 8 years, Kreshta nodded. This would be simple. Send a few ships, evacuate the humans, and begin mining operations. Most species moved quickly when the black ships arrived. The humans would probably be the same. He was wrong. Captain Torres commanded the hegemony evacuation fleet that arrived at Kepler's Garden 3 days later. He had done this many times before. Usually, the aliens saw his ships and started packing immediately. Sometimes they tried to negotiate. A few times, they had asked for more time to gather their belongings. The humans did something different. They said no. "This is our home," Dr. Sarah Chen told him over the communication system. "We will not leave." Torres was surprised. "You do not understand," he explained patiently. "The hegemony requires this world for mining operations. You have 48 hours to evacuate." "We understand perfectly," Sarah replied, "but we will not leave our home." Torres had never encountered this situation before. In 300 years, no species had simply refused to leave when ordered. He contacted Admiral Kreshta for instructions. "They refuse?" Kreshta could not believe it. "These are humans. They have no weapons, no military. What are they going to do against our ships?" "I do not know, sir. They just say they will not leave." Kreshta studied the files on human psychology again. The creatures formed strong emotional attachments to places and people. Their scientists called it pair bonding and territorial instinct. Perhaps they needed a demonstration of hegemony power to help them understand reality. "Destroy something important," he ordered. "But keep the casualties low. We want them to evacuate, not fight." Torres looked at the colony below. The humans had built a small town with farms surrounding it. There was a school, a medical center, and a community hall. Children played in the streets while their parents worked. "Target the school," Kreshta ordered when he saw the scanner images. "But wait until the children leave for the day." We are not barbarians. Torres prepared the bioweapon torpedo. It was a small device, designed to kill organic matter quickly and cleanly. The hegemony used them to clear forests for farming or remove dangerous wildlife from mining sites. One torpedo could sterilize a square kilometer in minutes, but there was a problem with the timing. The human school operated on a different schedule than expected. Instead of ending at midday, classes continued into the afternoon. Torres reported this to Admiral Kreshta. "Sir, the children are still in the school. Should we wait?" Kreshta was losing patience. The humans had refused a direct order from the hegemony. They needed to learn respect, and they needed to learn it quickly. Other species were watching. If humans could refuse evacuation orders, maybe others would try the same thing. "Fire the torpedo," he commanded. They should have left when ordered. The bioweapon struck the school at 2:47 inches the afternoon, local time. 47 children were inside, learning about mathematics and reading stories. They died in 12 seconds. Their teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, died trying to shield them with her body. Torres watched the school collapse through his ship's cameras. The building crumbled as the bioweapon ate through its support structures. There were no survivors. "Mission accomplished, sir," he reported to Admiral Kreshta. "The school has been destroyed. Good. Now they will understand. Send another evacuation notice. They have 12 hours to leave the planet." But something strange happened. Instead of panic, the humans showed something Torres had never seen before. They gathered around the ruined school and began digging through the debris with their bare hands. They pulled out the bodies of their children and laid them gently on the ground. Then they did something that made Torres feel uncomfortable. They stood in silence around the dead children and wept. Not just the parents, but everyone in the colony. Farmers and engineers and doctors all stood together, holding each other and crying. Sarah Chen knelt beside her daughter's body and whispered something Torres could not hear. Then she stood up and looked directly at his ship. Her face was different now. The fear was gone, replaced by something cold and terrible. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen," she said over the communication channel. Her voice was steady and calm. "You have killed our children. We will not leave this world, and we will not forgive this." Torres expected the humans to run or beg or surrender. Instead, they began to bury their dead. They dug graves in the red soil and placed each child carefully in the ground. They sang songs Torres did not understand and placed flowers on each grave. Then they went back to work. "Sir," Torres reported to Admiral Kreshta, "the humans are not evacuating. They are staying." "What do you mean, staying?" "They buried their dead and returned to their daily activities. They are acting as if we are not here." This was unacceptable. Kreshta had given the humans a demonstration of hegemony power. They should be terrified. They should be begging for mercy. Instead, they were ignoring him completely. "Destroy another building," he ordered. "Something bigger this time." But Torres hesitated. Something about the humans' behavior worried him. They had not reacted like any other species. There was no fear, no desperation, no attempts to negotiate. They had simply accepted the death of their children and continued living. It reminded him of stories his grandmother had told him about predators on his homeworld. The most dangerous ones did not roar or threaten. They simply watched and waited for the right moment to strike. "Sir," he said carefully, "perhaps we should wait for reinforcements." "Reinforcements? Against farmers and children? Execute your orders, Captain." Torres fired another bioweapon torpedo at the colony's water treatment plant. The building dissolved into brown sludge, cutting off the settlement's water supply. Now the humans would have to evacuate or die of thirst. But the humans did something impossible. Within 6 hours, they had built a new water system, using parts from their farming equipment. Working through the night, they dug new wells and constructed pumps and filters. By morning, they had clean water again. "How is this possible?" Kreshta demanded when he saw the reports. "I do not know, sir. They are using technology we have never seen before. Their equipment is primitive. But they are combining it in ways that should not work. What neither Torres nor Kreshta understood was that humans had been preparing for this moment for 300 years. Not consciously, but instinctively. Every human colony carried hidden knowledge and secret technologies. Every farmer knew how to build weapons. Every teacher understood military tactics. They had hoped never to need these skills. But when their children died, something ancient and terrible awakened in human hearts. The war had begun. Captain Maria Santos was studying a nebula near the vegan trade routes when the message came through. She was a xenogeologist, a scientist who studied alien rocks and minerals. Her ship, the Times Deep Explorer *, carried a crew of 12 researchers. They had never fired a weapon in anger. The quantum communication burst reached her ship at 0800 hours, ship time. It was a simple text message from the Human Colony Network. Kepler's Garden. 47 children dead. Hegemony attack. Maria read the message 3 times before it made sense. Then she read the detailed report that followed. The school, the bioweapon, the children's names and ages. She walked to her cabin and sat on her narrow bunk, staring at the wall. Maria had no children of her own. But she remembered her nephew's birthday party last year. 12 years old, gap-toothed smile, always asking questions about space and stars. Her hands began to shake. Captain, her science officer, Dr. Patel, knocked on the cabin door. We've received orders from Earth Command. Maria opened the door. Patel's dark eyes were red, as if he had been crying. Behind him, she could see the rest of the crew gathered in the corridor. They all had the same expression on their faces. What are the orders? Maria asked, though she already knew. Emergency Protocol 7. Patel said quietly. All human vessels are hereby transferred to military command. We are to report to the nearest naval base for reassignment. Protocol 7. Maria had learned about it in academy training, but she never expected to see it used. It was the emergency law that turned every human ship into a warship, every civilian into a soldier, every scientist into a weapon. How long until we can reach the nearest base? She asked. 18 days, Captain. But, Patel hesitated. But what? The crew has been discussing it. We think 18 days is too long to wait. Maria looked at her people. Dr. Patel, who studied alien fossils. Engineer Chen, who kept their engines running. Communications, Officer Brooks, who spoke 6 alien languages. They were scholars and explorers, not warriors, but they were also human. What are you suggesting? Maria asked. We want to start the war now, said Engineer Chen. We have mining charges in the cargo bay. Enough to take out a small ship. We have detailed scans of hegemony patrol routes, added Navigation Officer Kim. We know where they will be. We know where they will be. Maria thought about the children of Kepler's Garden. She thought about her nephew's birthday party and his questions about the stars. She thought about the promise humanity had made after the last great war. Never again would human children die while humans lived to protect them. Strip everything non-essential from the ship, she ordered. I want us fast and hard to detect. We're going hunting. Across human space, the same conversation was happening on 50 other ships. Research vessels became raiders. Cargo haulers became bombers. Survey ships became ghosts that hunted in the darkness between stars. On Earth, the Continental Assembly was in emergency session. President Martinez stood before the gathered representatives, her face pale but determined. The hegemony has committed an act of war against the human species, she announced. They have murdered our children. This cannot stand. Madam President, said Representative Kim from the Pacific Coalition, we are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. The hegemony has weapons we cannot match. We also have weapons they cannot match, Martinez replied. Dr. Harrison, please brief the Assembly on Project Prometheus. Dr. Harrison was 90 years old and walked with a cane. He had been the chief scientist on humanity's last military research program. Shut down 50 years ago when peace seemed permanent, he stood slowly and activated a holographic display. For 3 centuries, we have been preparing for this day, he said. Not openly, Not officially, but continuously. Every human colony has hidden research facilities. Every farming community has underground laboratories. We have been pretending to be peaceful farmers and miners while secretly becoming something else. The hologram showed images that made the assembly gasp. Weapons built into asteroid mining equipment. Warships disguised as cargo vessels. Factories hidden beneath peaceful farms that could produce military hardware. The hegemony thinks we are primitive, Doctor, Harrison continued. They see our simple cities and assume we are simple people. They do not understand that we have been watching them for 300 years, learning their weaknesses, preparing for the day when patience would no longer be enough. Representative Chen from the Mars colonies raised her hand. What are you saying, Doctor? That we have been planning for war all this time? No, Dr. Harrison replied. We have been planning to protect our children. The war is just the tool we will use to do it. President Martinez activated the emergency communication system. Every human ship, colony, and outpost would receive her message simultaneously. People of Earth and the colonies, she began. Today, the hegemony murdered 47 of our children. They believe this will make us afraid. They are wrong. We are not afraid. We are angry. Her voice grew stronger as she continued. For 300 years, we have chosen peace over war. We have built gardens instead of weapons. We have raised children instead of soldiers. Today, that choice has been taken from us. I am authorizing the use of any and all measures necessary to defend human lives. Every ship is now a warship. Every colony is now a fortress. Every human is now a soldier in the defense of our species. The hegemony wanted to see what humans are capable of when pushed too far. They will learn. The message reached Captain Santos while her crew was installing mining charges in their torpedo tubes. She paused in her work to listen, then went back to arming her makeshift weapons. The message reached the farming colony on New Montana, where the settlers were uncovering military equipment hidden beneath their grain silos. Weapons that could accelerate projectiles to near-light speed, disguised as agricultural machinery. The message reached the mining station on Asteroid Base 7, where engineers were converting their industrial equipment into something that had never been seen in this galaxy before. Most importantly, the message reached Dr. Sarah Chen on Kepler's garden. She stood beside her daughter's grave, listening to her president's words. When the message ended, she activated her own communicator. Admiral Kreshta, she transmitted on all frequencies. This is Dr. Sarah Chen. You killed my daughter. You killed 47 children who were learning to read and dream and hope for the future. Her voice was calm, almost conversational. You thought this would make us afraid. You thought we would run away and hide. You were wrong about humans. Admiral, we do not run from things that hurt our children. We hunt them down and kill them. You started this war because you wanted our planet. Now you will learn what humans do to those who threaten what we love. We are coming for you, Admiral. All of us. And we will not stop until every one of your ships is burning wreckage in space. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, humans began to move with purpose that their enemies could not understand. The gardeners were becoming wolves, and the wolves remembered why they had been feared on 100 worlds before they learned to be civilized. Admiral Kreshta received the message while reviewing plans for his next conquest. He listened to the human female's words and laughed. What could farmers and miners do against the might of the hegemony? He would learn the answer soon enough. They all would. The first sign that something was wrong came from Patrol Group Theta 7. They were 3 hegemony cruisers on a routine patrol near the human border when they simply vanished. One moment they were sending regular status reports, the next moment they were gone. Admiral Kreshta studied the sensor logs, but they showed nothing useful. The ships had been there, and then they were not. No distress signals. No signs of battle. No debris fields. It was as if they had been erased from existence. Pirates? Suggested his tactical officer. No, Kreshta said slowly. Pirates leave wreckage. This is something else. The something else had a name. Captain Maria Santos and her converted research vessel. She had spent 2 weeks stalking the patrol group, learning their patterns and weaknesses. When she struck, it was with weapons that should not have existed on a civilian ship. The Time's Deep Explorer Times had been transformed into something that looked harmless from the outside but carried death in its cargo holds. Dr. Patel had figured out how to turn their geological survey equipment into a gravity weapon. Engineer Chen had rebuilt their engines to run silent and invisible to hegemony sensors. They killed the first cruiser with a gravitational pulse that crushed it into a sphere 3 meters across. The crew died instantly, compressed into a tiny ball of metal and flesh. The second cruiser tried to flee, but Santos had anticipated that. Her ship appeared ahead of them, dropping mines that had once been asteroid sampling equipment. The third cruiser managed to send a partial distress signal before Communications Officer Brooks used their xenolinguistics computer to hack into its systems and turn its own weapons against it. 3 hegemony warships destroyed by a crew of scientists who had never fired a shot in anger before this week. It was the beginning of a nightmare that would consume the galaxy. On the mining colony of New Montana, the farmers were revealing secrets they had kept for 50 years. What looked like grain silos were actually electromagnetic launch tubes. What appeared to be tractors were mobile weapons platforms. The peaceful farming community was a military base disguised as agriculture. When Hegemony Squadron Beta 4 arrived to investigate reports of unusual activity, they found themselves under attack from weapons they did not understand. The humans fired projectiles at near light speed from 8 astronomical units away. The Hegemony ships were destroyed before they even knew they were under attack. Captain Vorsch of the Hegemony Intelligence Division received the reports with growing alarm. Human ships were appearing throughout hegemony space, striking at supply convoys and isolated outposts. But these were not military vessels. According to their databases, they were research ships, cargo haulers, and colony transports. "How are civilians destroying our warships?" he demanded from his subordinates. "We are not certain, sir. The humans appear to be using technology we have never encountered before. Their weapons violate several laws of physics as we understand them." This was not entirely true. The weapons followed physical laws perfectly well, but they were based on principles that the hegemony had never discovered, designed by human scientists who had been secretly preparing for this war for 3 centuries. Dr. Harrison's Project Prometheus had never really ended. It had simply gone underground, hidden in research laboratories, disguised as medical centers and schools. Human children grew up learning mathematics and science that would let them build weapons their enemies could not imagine. The attack on the hegemony bioweapon facility at Nexus Station was the work of a single human, former accountant James Chen. He had volunteered for a suicide mission, sneaking aboard the station in a cargo container. Once inside, he had 12 hours to sabotage the facility's production systems. He had needed only 4. Chen used his knowledge of supply chain management to identify the single critical component that could shut down the entire facility. Then he used skills learned in a university chemistry class to create an explosive that would make the station destroy itself. The Nexus Station bioweapon facility had been the source of the weapons that killed the children of Kepler's garden. When it exploded, the blast could be seen from 3 star systems away. 15,000 hegemony personnel died instantly, along with enough bioweapons to sterilize a dozen worlds. James Chen died in the explosion, but not before transmitting a final message. "For the children of Kepler's garden. This is for them." Admiral Kreshta was beginning to understand that he was fighting a different kind of war. The humans did not fight like any species in hegemony experience. They appeared in impossible places, using impossible weapons, and seemed to care nothing for their own lives. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving reports from across the sector. Human attacks on 17 different installations in the past 6 hours. How many ships are they using?" "That is the problem, sir. Our intelligence suggests the humans have fewer than 200 vessels capable of space combat. But we are tracking over 1,000 separate attacks." This was because the humans had stopped thinking of the war in terms of ships and battles. They thought of it in terms of targets and objectives. A single human could destroy a hegemony installation if they were willing to die in the attempt. And there seemed to be no shortage of humans willing to make that sacrifice. The attack on Hegemony Central Command was the work of 3 humans: Dr. Lisa Wong, a xenobiologist, engineer Pavel Novak, a mining specialist, and teacher Margaret O'Brien, who taught first grade on the colony world of New Dublin. They had stolen a civilian transport and somehow made the journey to the hegemony capital, traveling through space that should have been impossible to navigate without military-grade equipment. They appeared in the system's outer asteroid belt and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Dr. Lisa Wong, representing the human species," the transmission began. "We offer the hegemony one chance to surrender and face trial for war crimes. You have murdered our children. Justice demands payment." The hegemony fleet moved to intercept the small transport, 50 warships against 3 humans in an unarmed civilian vessel. It should have been over in minutes. Instead, the humans did something unprecedented. They had somehow acquired and modified hegemony bioweapons, turning them into a virus that could destroy the enemy's own ships from the inside. As the fleet closed in, the humans released the virus through their communication system. The hegemony ships began to dissolve. Hulls turned to gray paste, weapons melted into useless slag, and life support systems failed catastrophically. In 20 minutes, the entire fleet was reduced to floating debris. The 3 humans died when their transport was destroyed by a desperate hegemony defense platform, but their message reached every corner of the galaxy. The mighty hegemony fleet, destroyed by a school teacher, a mining engineer, and a woman who studied alien bacteria. Other species began to take notice. For 300 years, the hegemony had ruled through fear. Now that fear was turning to hope. If humans could fight the hegemony and win, maybe others could too. Rebellions sparked on a dozen worlds. The Centaurians, the Vectar, even the peaceful crystal builders of Zephyr Prime began to resist hegemony rule. They had seen what humans could accomplish with primitive weapons and desperate courage. Admiral Kreshta found himself fighting a war on 100 fronts. Human attacks had crippled his supply lines and destroyed half his bioweapon stockpiles. His own subject species were in revolt, and somewhere in space, Dr. Sarah Chen was hunting him specifically. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we have lost contact with Sector Command. All our bases in the Outer Rim have gone silent. How many ships do we have left?" "Perhaps 300, sir. Down from 2,000 at the start of this campaign." Kreshta stared at the tactical display. Red symbols marked hegemony losses. Blue symbols showed human positions. The blue symbols seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before retaliation was possible. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "we are receiving a transmission from the human colony ship times Defiance *. "The ship doesn't exist," Kreshta snapped. "Our records show no human vessel by that name. Nevertheless, sir, they are broadcasting on your personal frequency." The voice that came through the speakers was calm and familiar. Dr. Sarah Chen, the woman whose daughter he had killed to make an example of human stubbornness. "Hello, Admiral," she said. "I told you we were coming for you. We're almost there." Kreshta looked at his sensors. They showed nothing. Empty space in all directions. "We cannot locate the source of the transmission, sir," his tactical officer reported. "It appears to be coming from everywhere at once." "You killed my daughter and 46 other children because you wanted to teach us fear?" Chen continued. "You succeeded, Admiral. We learned to fear what we might become if we ever stopped being civilized. Thank you for that lesson. Today you will learn what humans were before we became gardeners and builders, before we decided that mercy was stronger than vengeance. Today you learn what we really are." The transmission ended. Admiral Kreshta waited for the attack that would kill him, knowing that his empire was already dead and that he had been the one to murder it with his own hands. Admiral Kreshta died alone in his command chamber when the Defiance times materialized inside his flagship. The human ship had somehow passed through solid matter to appear in the center of the hegemony vessel. It was impossible, but then again, the humans had been doing impossible things for 18 months. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the wreckage of the command deck, looking down at the alien who had ordered the death of her daughter. He had tried to surrender at the end, offering to negotiate terms, She had replied with 3 words. No terms offered. The last hegemony stronghold fell 6 weeks later. It was not a dramatic battle. The humans simply appeared in the system and began systematically destroying every military installation. The defenders surrendered rather than face the terrible weapons that turned matter itself against them. When the war ended, the galaxy was very quiet. Captain Maria Santos returned to scientific work, but her ship remained armed. The Times, Deep Explorer Times, looked like a harmless research vessel again, but everyone in space knew what it really was. The crew went back to studying alien rocks and mapping nebulae. But they carried memories of crushing enemy warships, like tin cans. Do you ever regret it? Dr. Patel asked her one day, as they observed the birth of new stars in the Andromeda region. Which part? Maria replied. Any of it. The killing, the destruction, becoming something we never wanted to be. Maria thought about the question for a long time. I regret that it was necessary, she said finally. But I don't regret doing it. The children of Kepler's garden deserved justice. On New Montana, the farmers put their weapons back underground. The grain silos went back to storing grain, instead of hiding electromagnetic cannons. But the equipment was still there, waiting beneath the peaceful fields. Everyone in the galaxy knew it was there. The Centaurians were the first to approach the humans with a formal diplomatic mission. Their ambassador, a tall blue creature named Velindra, was nervous as her ship approached Earth. We wish to express our gratitude, she told President Martinez during their first meeting. The hegemony enslaved our people for 2 centuries. You have given us freedom. We did not fight for you, Martinez replied honestly. We fought for our children. Your freedom was a side effect. Nevertheless, we are grateful. We would like to establish formal relations between our species. The negotiations were careful and polite. Both species had learned something important during the war. The Centaurians had learned that mercy was possible even in conflict. The humans had learned that they were still capable of terrible things when pushed too far. The trade agreement they signed became a model for other species. The humans offered food, medicine, and protection. In return, they asked only for respect and the promise that no species would ever again target human children. Ambassador Velindra was fascinated by human behavior. During her stay on Earth, she visited schools and hospitals and farms. She watched human children play while their parents worked. She saw how humans cared for their elderly and sick. I do not understand your species, she told Dr. Harrison during a formal dinner. You are capable of terrible destruction, yet you choose to build gardens. You could rule the galaxy through fear, yet you prefer to trade and negotiate. We learned something important during our history, Dr. Harrison replied. Power without restraint destroys the thing you are trying to protect. We fought the hegemony to protect our children. If we had become like them, we would have failed even in victory. But you could become like them again, Velindra observed. The capacity is still there. Yes, Dr. Harrison admitted, and that knowledge keeps our enemies honest. The memorial on Kepler's garden was completed 2 years after the war ended. It was a simple monument made of local red stone, listing the names of 47 children who had died in their school. Dr. Sarah Chen had designed it herself. Here lie 47 children who were loved by a species that never learned to forgive, the inscription read. Families came from across human space to visit the memorial. They brought flowers and toys and left them at the base of the stone. Children who had been born after the war learned the names of the children who had died before them. Ambassador Velindra attended the dedication ceremony. She watched human families gather around the memorial, holding their own children close. She saw how they wept for children they had never met, how they remembered names they had never spoken before. Your species mourns strangely, she told Dr. Chen after the ceremony. How so? You mourn for all children, not just your own. On my world, we grieve for our families. Humans grieve for their species. Sarah smiled sadly. That's why we won, she said. The hegemony thought they were threatening one colony. They didn't understand they were threatening every human child who would ever be born. They made enemies of parents who had not even had children yet. The galaxy settled into a new pattern. Trade flowed along routes protected by human patrols. Scientific expeditions mapped new worlds under human escort. Former hegemony slave species built their own civilizations with human advice and support. But everyone remembered what had happened to the last group that threatened human children. The Vectar Confederation tested human resolve 5 years after the war. They captured a human trading vessel and enslaved its crew. The humans sent a single message: return our people unharmed within 24 hours. The Vectar laughed. They had heard stories about human capabilities, but they ruled 100 worlds and commanded 1,000 ships. What could humans do against such power? They learned the answer when their capital city vanished in a flash of light that could be seen from orbit. The humans had somehow built a weapon that could reach across interstellar space and target specific buildings on a planet's surface. The human crew was returned within 6 hours. How did they do that? Valindra asked President Martinez during an emergency diplomatic conference. We learned new things during the war, Martinez replied. Things we hoped we would never have to use again. We were wrong. Will you share this technology with your allies? No. This kind of power belongs in no one's hands. We will use it only to protect human lives and the lives of those who have sworn to protect humans. The Vectar Confederation surrendered unconditionally and begged to be allowed to join the growing alliance of species under human protection. They were accepted, but with conditions. They would free all slaves, abandon their military expansion, and submit to monitoring by human observers. 10 years after the war, the galaxy was more peaceful than it had been in centuries. Pirates feared to operate in human-patrolled space. Warlords found their weapons mysteriously malfunctioning when they threatened peaceful worlds. Slave traders simply vanished, along with their ships and crews. The humans had become the guardians of a civilization they had never wanted to rule. They protected trade routes, mediated disputes, and maintained the peace through the simple knowledge that they were capable of ending any threat that arose. But they remained farmers and miners and teachers. They raised their children in small towns and peaceful colonies. They built schools and hospitals and libraries. They tended their gardens among the stars. Ambassador Valindra, now retired, often visited human space. She had grandchildren who played with human children and learned human languages. The galaxy had become a smaller, friendlier place. Do you ever miss the old days? She asked Dr. Chen during one visit to Kepler's garden. When humans were just another minor species that no one feared? Sarah Chen was older now, her hair white with age. She stood beside her daughter's grave, placing fresh flowers on the stone. Every day, she said quietly, we never wanted to be the strongest species in the galaxy. We just wanted to raise our children in peace. Odin Doc, but you cannot go back. No. The galaxy knows what we are capable of now. That knowledge can never be forgotten. She looked up at the sky, where human patrol ships moved like guardian angels through the darkness between stars. But maybe that's not such a bad thing. Other children are safe now. Not just human children, but all children. That's something worth being feared for. The memorial stood silent in the red soil of Kepler's garden, marking the place where the galaxy learned what happened when humans stopped being patient. The children who died there had become the reason why no child anywhere would ever again die to satisfy the ambitions of would-be conquerors. The gardeners had become wolves, but they had chosen to remain guardians. And in the new quiet that followed the storm, that choice made all the difference.